بن سعد، ولعن الله شمران، ولعن الله أمة أسرجت والجمت وتنقبت لقتالك. بأبي أنت وأمي، بأبي أنت وأمي، لقد عظم مصابي بك، فأسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني طلب ثارك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيها بالحسين في الدنيا والآخرة يا أبا عبد الله. إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قاتلك ونصب لك الحرب، وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم، وأبرأ إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانه وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشياعكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم، وأتقرب إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم، وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحرب، وبالبراءة من أشياعهم وأتباعهم. إني سلم لمن صالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم، وولي لمن والاكم، وعدو لمن آداكم. فأسأل الله الذي يكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم، ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم، أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة، وأن يثبت لي عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة، وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله، وأن يرزقني طلب ثاري مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم، وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصابي بكم أفضل ما يعطي مصابا بمصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد، ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد اللعين ابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة أبد الآبدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعن منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم العنهم جميعا. مولاي يا مولاي يا مولاي يا مولاي. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي هلأت بفنائك. عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني، وابدأ به أولا ثم الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم لعن يزيد خامسا، ولعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجانا، وعمر بن سعد وشمرا وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة يا الله. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين، لك على مصابهم. الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود، وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. صلوات. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر الحمد. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن مولانا أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين وقاتل المشرقين عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن مولانا أمير المؤمنين عليا حجة الله. حي على السلام. حي على السلام. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل. حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. وصلى الله على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله محمد صلوات.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجهم. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. All praise is due to Allah, whose worth cannot be described by speakers, whose bounties cannot be counted by calculators, and whose claim to obedience cannot be satisfied by those whom attempt to do so, whom the height of intellectual courage cannot appreciate, and the divings of understandings cannot reach. He for whose description no limit has been laid down, no time is ordained, no duration is fixed, no eulogy exists. He brought forth creation through his omnipotence, dispersed winds through his compassion, and made firm the shaking earth with rocks. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajhum. Dear brothers and sisters, respected elders, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to our 6th night of our Muharram series, where we're joined by our respected friend and guest from the United States of America, SAYED JAWAD QAZWINI. We'd like to thank you for attending and taking part in the Majalis series. Surely without your efforts, events like this are not viable. Also, on behalf of Muhibban, I'd like to apologize for our circumstances yesterday. It wasn't in our power that we couldn't control the weather, and thus we had to find other means to continue the program. But I still do hope that it was as interactive as possible, and I still hope that you could take something away from it. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Following the tradition, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Maulana Sayyid Hashim Musavi, who will be joining us for the 6th night of his series. Please welcome him with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
الله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم مصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. Another question that always raised about Imam Hussein alayhi salam is that what characteristics does he have that after all these years, after his martyrdom for passing thousands of years, 1,500 years, after all this year, why still his name is alive? You can tell some people will die after 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, maximum 1 year or 2 years. People forget, but 14 centuries, still when you think about Imam Hussein alayhi salam, it seems that he died today, he died yesterday, just like this. So there will be a secret, there will be a philosophy here that why his name still is alive. I think one of the best answer for this, or one of the nearest or the closest answer to this question, is the enlightening words of the Holy Prophets, which is mentioned in Jami' al-Ahadith. In the book of Jami' al-Ahadith, these hadiths is mentioned. And of course, these hadiths talking about Imam Hussein alayhi salam while he was a little child. He says, إن لقتل الحسين عليه السلام حرارة في قلوب المؤمنين لا تبرد أبدا. Certainly, the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam creates warmth in the hearts of the believers that will never be cold or extinguished. I am just going to quote to some messages from the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there are some important messages in this speech that, because of the time, I'm just going to quote to point to two of these messages. First, the Prophet is going to predict, he foretold the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He said, "Inna liqatl al-Hussein." So indeed, for the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, so he introduced him as a martyr, as a shaheed. You know, while the Prophet, he said this hadith, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, probably he was like a little child. We don't know how many years, but maximum 6-7 years. But the Prophet said, "Inna liqatl." He introduced that there will be a shahada for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So, and then the Prophet clarified the position of all those who did not accompany him. Those who, like, they were in doubt that his way is right, his action is correct. The Prophet says, introduce him that this is the right path. So in this, according to this hadith, he has introduced the way of Hussein alayhi salam, the work of Hussein alayhi salam, the path of Hussein alayhi salam, the helping for Hussein alayhi salam as a work for God, as a path for the God, as the helping of the God, and inform people that definitely those who are not, helping Hussein alayhi salam, they did not help God. Why is that? What is the reason? Why? What is our proof? Because in this hadith, Prophet introduced Hussein as a shaheed, and we know shaheed never go to the wrong way. As long as we are talking about the right shaheed, not so many people that call them a shaheed, like so-called shaheed, which nowadays you can find everywhere. But the real shaheed, which Imam Hussein alayhi salam is on the top of this, never go astray, never go to the wrong way. So shaheed is looking always for pleasing the God. So if he is shaheed, so his way is the right way. So in the course of this struggle, in the way of this struggle, Imam repeatedly asked so many elders of the Islamic communities and asked them for helping, for fighting against oppression and irreligion. But no one was willing to listen to him, to help him. Why? Because they knew that the way, this path is full of danger. But the Prophet, 50 years ago, he predicted this time. So he introduced people. So most of the people who refused to help Imam Hussein alayhi salam were the so-called mu'mineen who saw their material interest in opposition to this uprising. So they sought various excuses not to accompany him. They talked in different areas. They were looking for some excuse not to help him and find some way to escape, even sometimes to meet him. You can go and search his history. You will find this. One of the most important excuse was that Yazid is the ruler of Islamic Ummah, and the Islamic society, if they work against this ruler, it means they are against the rule and against the law of Allah, divine law. And not only right to say this, they insisted, even insisted Imam alayhi salam to prevent Imam alayhi salam from doing so. So in that case, the Prophet said, you are in wrong way because Hussein is shaheed. And shaheed, it's in a right path. One of the proof that I said this, people were looking for a different excuse. You can find in the answer of Shamr. When Shamr was asked, why you killed son of the Prophet? Why you killed Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam? He replied that we were commissioned to obey our Imam. Look at the answer. He said, we were commissioned to obey our Imam, and for this we expect reward from the Imam and from God. Can you imagine? You kill Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam and you're looking for the reward. But according to the hadith, the Prophet of Islam predicted these days many years ago. The day of Ashura, he predicted many years ago. And in fact, with this hadith, he sent a message to whole Muslim who doubted the uprising of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that the right path is the right of Hussein alayhi salam, is the way, is the path that Hussein goes. This message still is alive. Nowadays, you can find, you will see some people still, they say, Hussein did wrong because he stood against the ruler. And they call it, and even now you can find in different social media, some people from different countries, they say like this. They want to defend Yazid, but they don't know that Prophet of Islam, 50 years before the events of Karbala has happened, he said that Hussein is shaheed. If Hussein is shaheed, the others are, the killer cannot be with him in the Jannah. So this tells us that Hussein is in a right path. So because he is in a right path, we have to follow him. Otherwise, we are not going to be with him. Because of the time is finished, I was not able to mention the second part of this hadith and second message of this hadith. And inshallah, next time we'll discuss about the second message of this hadith, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Before we continue, could I request a Surah Fatiha for the Madhumin and the Madhumat who have sadly lost their lives as a result of this pandemic, and for those whom tragically lost their lives in the Lebanese accident a couple of weeks ago. Continuing our culture of reenacting and telling the story of what happened on the day of Ashura, I'd now like to welcome the team who are responsible for creating the narrative. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Qasim, Aoun and Muhammad were gathered to discuss the part they would play the following day in defense of their uncle. There was determination written large on their young faces. They were watching the moon progress as it was marching slowly through that cloudless sky, anxiously waiting for tomorrow to unfold its events. Each one of them had the desire to go first into the battlefield to shed their blood. Their talks were interrupted by someone coming and informing Qasim that his mother Farwa wanted to see him. He hurried to the tent. As soon as he entered, his mother put her arms lovingly around him and said,
Qasim, my son, do you know why I called you here? I wanted to remind you about your duty towards your loving uncle Hussein. I want to tell you something about the unparalleled love and affection Hassan, your father, had for his brother Hussein. The two of them were so devoted to each other that they were always thinking and acting in unison. The slightest pain suffered by one was instantaneously felt by the other. With the unique love your father had for Hussein, I can well imagine how he, if alive, would have felt today. He would have been the first to sacrifice his life for his beloved younger brother. I am sure he wanted you to stand in on him for this day. My child, my dear child, when he passed away, you were too young to comprehend life. On his deathbed, his last words to me were,
Farwa, I entrust you and my child and Hussein. When Qasim grows up, you tell him that my dying desire is that he should stand by my brother Hussein through thick and thin. I can see the clouds of treachery gathering against Hussein. A day may come when he may need the unflinching devotion and sacrifice of his near and dear ones. Though I will not live to see that day, as a last wish, I want you to prepare Qasim from his childhood.
Her voice choked with emotion as she continued,
My Qasim, since the day your father took his last breath, Hussein has looked after you as his own son. You know how he has fulfilled your every wish, the love and dear affection of your father. Now, my son, it is your turn. It is your turn to show that you can repay, just to some extent, your debts of gratitude by laying down your life for him before any of his sons, his brothers, and kinsmen.
Qasim listened to his mother with his head bowed in respect. He knew how his mother was attached to him after his father's death. He affectionately hugged her and said,
My dearest mother, I do not know how I can thank you for what you have just said to me. My affection for my uncle Hussein is known to you. From my childhood I have not known what father love means, but I know for certain that even my father, if alive, would not have been so kind, so considerate, so affectionate to me as my uncle Hussein has been to me. He has not allowed me to feel like an orphan. Thanks to him, in this house, my every wish has become a command. How is it possible for me, the son of Hassan, to not fulfill my duty to him? For me, death would be far better than a life without him and my dear uncle Abbas and my cousin Ali Akbar, Muhammad and the others.
Like all passing things, that night also passed away to become a chapter of history. The day dawned, and with it began the gory events which make mankind, who have the vestiges of humanity, tremble with rage and grief. Qasim was no less passionate in his supplication for the Imam's permission to die on the battlefield. To Qasim's repeated request, his uncle's reply was,
My dear child, how can I permit you to go when I know for certain that death awaits those who venture out? Your father, my beloved Hassan, had entrusted you to my care on his deathbed. My heart trembles at the very thought of sending you into the jaws of death.
Imam Hussein alayhi salam would not allow Qasim to take to the battlefield. Qasim became dejected and upset. Farwa burst into tears. She remembered her husband's words that when this happened, she should deliver to him an envelope wherein he had kept a letter, especially for this occasion. Qasim found 2 letters, one addressed to him, the other addressed to Hussein. Imam Hassan had written,
My child, when this letter reaches you, I will be no more. When you will read it, you will find yourself torn with conflict between your desire to do your duty and fulfill your obligations, demonstrate your love and esteem for your uncle, and his love and affection for you, compelling him to hold you back. Oh my Qasim, I have written a letter for my dearest brother Hussein. You may deliver this to Hussein so that he may grant you to your heart's desire. There is much that I could say for this occasion, but when you will read this, you will find that the time separating us is not long. So hurry, my child, as I am waiting for you with open arms to welcome you.
Qasim felt choked with emotion. His mother also stood speechless, with feelings surging in her heart. Both were thinking in unison how loving and how thoughtful it was of Hassan to provide a solution for their dilemma. Qasim came over to Hussein. He handed over the letter of his father to Hussein, which he had found in the envelope.
My beloved brother Hussein, when this letter will be read by you, you will be surrounded by sorrow on all sides, with dead bodies of your near and dear ones strewn around you. I will not be there to pay down my life for you, O brother Hussein, but I am leaving behind my Qasim to be my deputy and representative on this day. O Hussein, I beseech you not to reject my offering. In the name of love that you bear for me, I implore you to let Qasim go forth and die in your defense. Dearest brother, in spirit I am with you, watching your heroic sacrifices and sharing your woes and afflictions.
Qasim bowed his head after receiving permission from his uncle, and he hurried to his mother.
My dear son, all these years I have been waiting for the day when you would become a groom and come to receive my blessings. It seems that fate has decided otherwise. Qasim, my loving Qasim, it is custom for grooms to apply henna on their hands, though I have none with me. I know that you will not need it. Your hands will be dyed with your own blood.
With these words, she kissed her son's cheeks and embraced him. It was a long embrace, the embrace of a mother who knew she was seeing her young darling for the last time in this world. Holding him tightly in her arms, she was looking lovingly at his face, as if she wanted to let his image sink into her mind's eye forever. All partings are sad, but where the parting is forever, what words can describe? Qasim addressed the enemy with an eloquence which reminded many of the sermons of his grandfather Ali. Qasim fought battles with several of them. He threw them from their horses as if he were a seasoned warrior and not a youth of 14, with 3 days' thirst and hunger. He was wounded from head to foot. When he saw that he could no longer remain in the saddle, he gave a cry. He gave a cry, offering his last salutation to his uncle. His last salutation to his uncle Hussein.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجهم. Dear brothers and sisters, before we continue the program, just a few housekeeping rules. I know I've gone through them over the past couple of nights, but it is extremely important that I continue and reiterate the rules for the safety of our attendees, for the safety of you, and for the safety of our volunteers. The first housekeeping rule is that upon entering and leaving the site, if we could please request that you adhere to the 5 miles per hour limit. Secondly, if we could request that you please turn off your engines to prevent disturbance to the speaker or to other attendees. Thirdly, there's a strict policy of remaining within your vehicles to maintain distancing and to adhere to the governmental guidelines provided by Salford City Council. Fourthly, if I could request all brothers and sisters that if you do have an emergency and you do want to leave your car, please do turn on your hazard lights and a volunteer will approach and resolve your issue. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Once again, Muhibban would like to thank you for your efforts, for your contributions. But again, without your efforts, such events are not viable, and we humbly request you, we sincerely request you that you please do support our events. The cost analysis of this event is £60,000, and inshallah tomorrow, with the permission of the team, I will be able to get a sheet where we can show you how much money we've raised and how much is left to raise. But as you can see, in these unprecedented times, even organizing an event to this magnitude was extremely difficult. It required a lot of permission, it required a lot of planning, and on top of that, it required a lot of finances. So these events are not viable without your support, and we continually ask you to keep on supporting us through donations, through our merchandise. Recently, we have been selling car flags to show your undying support towards Aba Abdullah. And I would recommend every lover of Imam Hussein should have these on their cars to show the world that they belong to the path of Imam Hussein. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Finally, as we're approaching closer to the day of Ashura, tonight the Masa'ib will be of Hazrat Qasim alayhi salam. And so we will bring the Mehndi of Hazrat Qasim during Masa'ib. We would highly recommend that you stay during the duration of the Masa'ib so that you can experience and so that you can express your grief and you can shed tears for Abu Abdullah and Hazrat Qasim and thus become closer towards Allah. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our respected scholar, dear guest,